Canadians Talk on the Corus Radio Network.
We're sitting here with Ed Whittingham. He is Executive Director of the Pembina Institute. And Ed, as Canadians talk about the oil sands and the litany of issues surrounding this debate, what are some of the issues that we really need to focus on?
I think overall, Rob, we really need to focus on the pace and scale of development because that drives so many of the impacts we're talking about. And just to give you a little bit of historical context, in the mid-90s, here in the province, the Oil Sands Task Force set a production goal out of the oil sands of 1 million barrels per day by 2020. We hit that target in 2004, 16 years ahead of target. And I think that our environmental management systems have been playing catch up ever since. And that's my group. We sort of focus on primarily the environmental impacts of oil sands development. We have to make sure that those impacts aren't worsened as the pace and scale continues.
How do we view that balance, the balance between managing the risks and reaping the benefits of having this resource? How do we walk that fine line?
Well, that's why at Pembina we talk about responsible development of the oil sands. We're not a group like some that advocate for shutting it down tomorrow. We don't think that's reasonable, practical, or in the best interests of Albertans or Canadians. But we do think that it needs to be developed responsibly. And by responsible, that means developing in a way that provides the economic benefits that we're looking for as Canadians and Albertans, but in a way that doesn't impair key environmental thresholds, whether that includes our airsheds, our watersheds, the land that we need for sensitive species like caribou, or this big issue we have around climate change.
And is climate the big issue? Is that the biggest challenge that the oil sands faces right now? Or are there other issues that maybe don't get as much attention that we need to focus on?
I think it's all of the above in terms of the issues that we need to focus on. Obviously, climate change is a big one. It's called the mother of all issues in many ways because that drives impacts on species, animals, it drives impacts on water, on the land itself. But if you talk to a typical Albertan, they're just as connected to the water that they drink, the land that they need to trap or hunt or to recreate, and the air that we breathe. So all of those issues are important to Albertans, and we can't just focus on one at the exclusion of the others.
Is industry capable of change? Can industry itself be part of the solution?
I think industry is a key part of responsible development. And I don't think you have anyone who wakes up in the morning inside of industry and thinks of new and creative ways to destroy the environment. Just like you don't have those who are opponents of irresponsible development who think of new and creative ways to destroy jobs. That's false extremes. But industry can't be the one to regulate the pace and scale of development. Either we're just going to say, hey, leave it up to the market and let's let it grow as big as it's going to get big, but that may cause us to impair some of those, cross over those key environmental thresholds. Or we have a role for government to say, in developing it responsibly, we need to get a handle on the pace and scale. And that means we'll probably have to draw the line at a certain level of production per day and say beyond that, we're just risking too much as Albertans.
Obviously, we have standards in place, provincial standards, federal standards when it comes to energy development. But is there a lot more we need to be doing?
Absolutely. We've got some standards in place, but overall I think the regulatory regime, both provincially and federally, needs to get a lot tighter if we're going to develop the oil sands responsibly. Look at a good starting point is tailings management. We've got to start. We need to get better if we're truly to get rid of the tailings ponds that frankly are a blight on the landscape. And I think everyone in Alberta would prefer not to have them there. We need a better regulatory incentive to really encourage companies to get them off the landscape on a much more aggressive timeline than current.
As we go forward, Ed, the demand for oil is still going to be there for some time, but also these environmental challenges we face are not going away either. So how do we find that balance that we spoke of going forward and ensuring that Canada is a leader, both in terms of being an energy producer, but also being an environmental leader?
Sure. First thing is we need to set the clear intention of being an environmental leader. I'm encouraged to see our new Premier, Jim Prentice, that he has set that marker for Alberta. He wants Alberta to be an environmental leader. That's a good starting point. But part of being a leader is looking not just at the next year, or if you're a CEO, not just looking at the next 2 quarters returns. It's really looking down the field. And to mix my sports metaphors, as Canadians, we need to head to where the puck is going, not skate to where the puck is right now. And one thing is clear is that the world is going in a low carbon direction. And we need to prepare for that as Albertans, as Canadians, and we need to prepare our economy for that. So at the end of the day, we don't develop a bunch of oil which is used in the short term, but demand goes down, world goes in this different direction, and then suddenly we have few markets willing to accept our product. We've got to prepare for that eventuality now.
Ed, thank you so much for coming in here today. Really appreciate the insight.
My pleasure, Rob.
Canadians Talk on the Corus Radio Network.